You can tell him I'm also the cameraman.
My mother is serving as camera person for the sake of this video. Okay, this is my persuasive speech, and it's about same-sex marriages. Same-sex marriage has been widely criticized for years. Many feel that it goes against the Bible, and many feel that it is harmful to society. As Americans, we all have the right to marry. This right should not be taken away from a person because they love a person of the opposite sex. Same-sex marriages should be legal. Homosexuals have the same rights as heterosexuals and deserve the right to be legally married to a person they love. Though at least 9 Bible verses attest to the sinfulness of homosexuality, all Americans have the right to freedom of speech and religion. Therefore, they are not required to believe that same-sex marriage is a sin. Many Americans do not believe in the teachings of the Bible. Making same-sex marriages illegal would be unconstitutional by taking away guaranteed rights from many Americans. Marriage does not have to be a religious affair. A couple can be united by a judge in a courtroom without having any religious ties to it at all. Rights and amendments apply to all Americans, not just straight Americans. Same-sex marriages protect the rights of Americans. All Americans have the right to freedom of speech and religion, meaning they can believe whatever they want when it comes to the definition of marriage. It is unfair to force beliefs on others. Procreation is also a concern when it comes to same-sex marriage. Contrary to many beliefs, the purpose of marriage is no longer solely to bear children. Many couples get married just because they enjoy each other's company and love each other, without having any intentions of having children, such as a couple entering their second marriage. If people are so worried about procreation, why not require couples to bear children? Elderly couples who are past the age of being able to have children are still allowed to marry, as well as couples where one partner is in prison or one partner is biologically incapable of producing a child. None of these couples can have children, yet they are still allowed to be legally married. Therefore, it is extremely hypocritical to say gay couples can't marry just because they can't have children. Procreation is no longer the goal of many couples, straight or not. If couples who are unable to procreate are allowed to marry, such as the elderly or those on their deathbeds, or those in prison, homosexual couples should have the right to marry as well. Though the Bible says that homosexuality is an abomination, it also says that murder is an abomination. Murderers are still allowed to marry, making it hypocritical for homosexuals to have their marital rights taken away because the Bible deems it a sin. There is also fear that same-sex marriages will bring society to a crashing halt. It is feared that if same-sex couples are allowed to marry, there will be too many elderly and not enough children. Many believe that without a sufficient number of young people, society would deteriorate and ultimately bring down the human race. This is faulty logic. To prevent this from happening, it would be necessary to make homosexuality illegal in general. That is an impossible theory. Homosexuals are not going to turn straight just because they aren't allowed to marry their partner. In the long run, people are going to be gay whether they are allowed to be married or not. They are never going to produce children or marry someone of the opposite sex. The theory of having people change from homosexual to heterosexual is far-fetched and ludicrous. Whether society likes it or not, gay people are going to live together and function like a married couple. Perhaps it could even help society. If gay couples were allowed to be legally married and adopt children, it could get some less fortunate children out of orphanages and into a loving home with real parents, even if those parents were of the same sex. A parent is defined as a person who protects someone. It is not defined by gender. Therefore, 2 men or 2 women are perfectly capable of being loving and caring parents. There are no statistics that show differently. Marriage should be based on love, not on gender or the ability to procreate. Happy and loving families are what society really needs. If homosexuals were forced to marry someone of the opposite sex, it could cause constant fighting and turmoil, which would lead to an unhappy and potentially unsafe home for a child. It would be unjust for homosexuals to be given different rights than straight people. There are no legitimate reasons for gays to not be allowed to marry. The way people think of marriage has changed many times. Women used to be the property of their husbands, but this was changed because it was decided to be unjust. This is the same principle. Same-sex marriages should be legal. Homosexuals have the same rights as heterosexuals and deserve the right to be legally married to a person they love.